Nike shares have fallen nearly 2% after the shoes worn by US college basketball megastar Zion Williamson split in half, causing him to fall and injure himself. The shoe blowout has wiped more than $1.7 billion off Nike's market capitalisation, with millions tuning in for the match and former US President Barack Obama witnessing the incident courtside. Joining me today for Taking Stock is Pro Vice-Chancellor at Sydney University, Professor Richard Miles, and Your Money's digital editor, Aleks Vickovich. Good evening to you both. Thanks for joining me here. Look, how damaging is this to the Nike brand? We might kick off with you, Aleks.
Yeah, look, I think Nike will probably survive this. They've survived, criticisms over a long history. They've been accused of, child exploitation and all sorts of things that are arguably more serious than this. Having said that, if you're a small business and your product is sort of exposed as faulty or having a problem on an international stage, then it probably would do you in. But I think for Nike, there's some damage control now, but I think they probably survive this.
What do you think, Richard? Is it one of the just perfect storm, just three random things happen all at once?
I think it's a sort of week's news and then it will just pass. But also it shows a lot about college sport in America as well. I mean, you're trying to think about a college athlete in Australia having this kind of impact. It would just never happen, would it?
I think that's a really important context to give. I mean, college sports in the US is huge business. I mean, as big in some ways as the sort of national sports leagues. I've been to matches in Texas, for example, where you've got 100,000 people in the audience, which is more than at the Sydney opening, the Olympic opening ceremony games. I think it really is, and there's billions of dollars that change hands, not just to the university. There's coaches get paid more than bank CEOs in Australia, and the networks make billions of dollars as well. So, maybe it is time to start thinking about paying these players, and that's one of the debates that's now being kicked up again because of this, because people are asking whether Zion Williamson was sufficiently insured, as he probably would be if he was in the NBA. So I don't know what you think, Richard.
So I worked for a while at the University of Wisconsin, and the highest paid employee of the University of Wisconsin was the football coach. And every week, 80,000 students or 80,000 people used to come and watch the team. Can you imagine?
No, we can't fathom that scale.
And of course, these guys are not professionals, but there's all sorts of inducements and all sorts of things which go in to basically getting them to sign for particular teams. It's just like huge business. And
I guess the theory is that because they're getting a free education by way of, a sports scholarship, that's kind of sufficient in paying these guys. But, I'm not sure that it really is. I don't think they're living, they're probably not below the poverty line. I think if they're going to a top university playing sports, they're being looked after to some extent, but certainly not, seeing the millions that are being sort of, transacted between TV networks and universities. So, I wonder whether it is time to revisit this.
But it wasn't just any college game and it wasn't just any player, was it? I mean, how significant is, the impact that Zion Williamson was already having in basketball? Yeah,
well, look, he's one of the top draft picks, and that's why they're saying maybe he should just skip the whole college thing and go straight to the leagues, which is an option that is open to people now. This was a huge game. You got Barack Obama in the audience, which I think is what helped it trend, Spike Lee and other celebrities. So, it really was a big game. And the other thing is, in the United States, I mean, there's a lot of focus on college ball, I think because people feel kind of parochial about their local colleges, regardless of if they go there, in the way that we do about our local sports. You've got to remember, the top sporting leagues in the States, they change cities all the time, they move around the country, so they don't have those sort of deep roots that we might get here with our local leagues. And I think that's one of the reasons people feel so emotional about the college leagues.
And it's also about telly. It's about sort of 24-hour sports coverage, and you need all those games to keep things going.
So, Richard, is it the same thing here? I mean, obviously we don't see the same sort of scale with, TV networks and so on, but, is there money that changes hands, and is it a big part of the university's revenue?
No, not in any way at all. I mean, obviously, Sydney University and other universities here have got strong sports teams, but there's quite a sort of difference between what goes on here and what goes on in America. In fact, it's a big difference. When people go to university, obviously in Australia, because of their academic prowess, some of those guys that are going through the American universities, is it about their academic prowess or their sports prowess? Can be quite a different thing.
Well, I'm sure that question's actually pretty easy to answer, depending on which student you're looking at. All right, let's move on now to our next topic. A 4-day working week could boost employee happiness and productivity. A New Zealand finance firm has put it to the test, switching its 240 staff to a 4-day week and maintaining their pay with overwhelmingly positive results. So, should we all be adopting this smaller working week? Does it make me sound lazy if I say yes?
I'd be happy to take a 5-day working week or a 6-day working week. You know, we work hard in the media, Sophie. Look, I think if it works for this business, then it's great. When the weekend, when it was introduced, was really revolutionary, and of course it required a lot of lobbying and then subsequent government intervention to make it happen. So I don't think we're really at a critical mass yet. But, you know, wellness is becoming a way bigger focus in the business world, you know, and rightly so. People are focusing more on the health and well-being of staff. And if this is one of the ways to get there, then I think increasingly as a culture we'll look at it.
Well, decades ago it was predicted that we wouldn't work even a third of the hours that we're working at because there'd be this automation and bits of our job would be, you know, not sort of things we'd have to front up for. But it hasn't happened. Why not?
Because AI, we've constantly, basically, completely overestimated what robots will be able to do. We still need to do a lot of the thinking for robots and basically the organising. So, you know, there's always this sort of utopian idea that we're just going to be sitting around doing nothing. But you've got to remember that we're not designed for that, okay? You know, you hear of so many people, say, retiring and then sort of dropping dead or something like that, because we're actually kind of built for a subsistence life, okay? An idea that we should need to work. And so, you know, I'm a bit suspicious of the 4-day week, but I'll take it as long as as long as my kids don't take a 4-day week.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, if you instituted it across the board, then productivity-wise, we would find other ways to simply get the same result, and, you know, we'd become accustomed to it. I think where it's really interesting is the way that it's being done at the moment, where certain businesses are taking it on themselves to test these sorts of things for altruistic purposes or indeed as an incentive. There's another firm down in Tasmania, Collins SBA. It's a small accounting and financial planning firm, and they made headlines around the country when they instituted not a 4-day week but a 5-hour day, 5 days a week. So all of their staff come in at 9, leave at 1 p.m, and they did, you know, quite systematic reporting on it and ended up, you know, deciding that it really did work for them, that they were able to be as productive. And one of the reasons were people really were using that afternoon time to be active and to be healthier, and they saw all sorts of results off the back of that, and they also saved some money on Friday drinks, which was the previous perk that they were running. So,
but I've got to admit, I'm a bit sceptical about all of this, okay, because I think it looks good. I think there's a lot of window dressing goes on. People work all the time now. It's like sort of 24-hour culture. You know, we get essays in from students, you know, they're sending them in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, people are working sort of odd hours. And so I'm not convinced we're working less. I think actually we're in a sort of, I think the division between work and leisure is really, really sort of blurred. And I think often we're just sort of working at a low level all the time.
Well, they might just be automating the send of those essays to be at 2 in the morning. You can do that now, Richard, so don't fall for the tricks these kids are getting up to.
Oh, OK.
All right, moving on now. Soon-to-be billionaire Kylie Jenner has slashed the prices of her lip kit collaboration with best friend Jordan Woods after she was found to be having an affair with her sister's boyfriend. I hope you're keeping up. Just let me know if you're not. So is Kylie trying to cut ties to save her image, or is she just trying to make money from more publicity? Richard, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time studying the Kardashians and all their offshoots and businesses. This is very academic stuff. What do you think's going on here?
I think probably both things. I think there's a sort of ritual humiliation going on here. You know, there's nothing better than cutting the price of people's products. And these people are totally commodified, right? So in other words, you know, what your stuff sells for is what you are and what you're worth. And what the message is, you're kind of a cut price product now. So I'm sure that's going on. But at the same time, these people rely on, you know, constant commotion, constant fights. And this is just like kind of brilliant, right?
Yeah. Well, if she really wanted to hit her where it hurts, she'd just like make the product disappear altogether, wouldn't she?
No, but the humiliation. So look, if you're an author, okay, there used to be one book in that town I used to live in, Cambridge, in the UK, where you didn't want your books to be put, and that was a bookshop called Galloway and Porter, which remaindered books. And so basically, if you ever wanted to really insult somebody, say, oh, look, I've just seen 500 copies of your book, remaindered copies, all selling for 50 cents a copy in there, right? And it's kind of embarrassing.
Well, thank you for bringing an intellectual element to this discussion. That's very welcome. Alex, what do you reckon?
Well, look, like Richard, I have a very in-depth understanding of the Kardashian family and its various elements.
Of course you do.
I did receive a briefing.
Have you cancelled your order on your lip kit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, apparently it is a good quality product. That's what I'm told by informed sources. Look, I think there's a few ways in which this is interesting. Firstly, I think, to some extent, yes, the fact that if we're talking about the Kardashians and the Jenners and these kind of social media influencers, then they're making money. And I think that really is their currency. And so there's an element of that. But I also think with this one, it does show that there is a real risk to getting into business with friends and family as well. There's also a risk with these kinds of businesses that are really personality based. I mean, we were just talking about the quality of the eyeliner or the lip product, and it may well be of, sufficient quality in that market. But really what these businesses are trading off is the celebrity status of the entrepreneurs behind them. And I think the risk with that is that, when they do have these kinds of personal issues that boil over, into the social media world, they get hurt by that potentially in a way that a large listed organisation could survive a sex scandal. Perhaps with these guys, because they are so visible, there's an additional risk there.
Well, you keep mentioning this word risk, but surely the biggest risk is hooking up with your meal ticket's sister's boyfriend and not thinking it through. I mean, it's very close to them premiering their next season. Could this not all just be a bit of a publicity stunt? That's too big a risk to take.
She's a stroke of genius. She'll have her own show. She won't need them. It's one of those things, isn't it? It just looks quite contrived, doesn't it?
And look, she can't be the only person who's on the bad side of the Kardashians in America, surely.
But a lot of this stuff does look like a stunt, and yet, it doesn't seem to hurt them. People are just interested in the intricacies of their private lives, and I suppose that's the genius of the show that led to their fame, was that, there wasn't much to it. It really was, cameras strapped to a family. And so people don't have a huge expectation of, what they want to see from these people. They're just happy to follow their everyday kind of moves and continues to work for them.
Yeah, I still think it's a publicity stunt, but thanks anyway. Richard, Miles and Aleks Vickovich, thanks so much for your time tonight.